Okay. All right. Coming out of closed session, anything to report, County Council?
The board just heard item number 1. The second item was continued following the regular agenda, and there was no reportable action regarding item number 1.
Perfect. Thank you. Now we'll go to regular agenda number 1, County Clerk, Auditor, Controller elections. Joe Paul Gonzalez.
Mr.
Okay.
Yeah, item 1 we're going to pull from the agenda,
Perfect.
and we'll hear that another day when we have the full board
Item
here.
1 will be scratched. Yeah. Okay. We'll go on to number 2 then. County Administrator Officer on the OPEB presentation. Thank you.
Speaker microphone.
Yes, CEO Espinoza asked me to give an update as to what's going on with OPEB, and specifically our CalPERS OPEB Trust, which we call the CERBT. So in June of 2009, still the fiscal year 08-09, the county put the first contribution into the OPEB Trust. It was about $2.3 million. Since then, we have put in an additional $15 million in contributions. We expect to take some disbursements from the trust for retiree health care this year, about $1.4 million. Overall, all of the CERBT expenses have been total of about $107,000. But we have earned over $7 million in that CERBT Trust in investment earnings. So at this juncture, we're expecting that the total assets are about over $20 million, $20.6 million. So the average rate of return is 9.85%. Not bad for for government money. So this is kind of a annualized contributions and investment earnings over the years since 2008 to current. You could see the blue line is our investment earnings, and the light teal color has been our contributions. Our contributions started off, over $2 million, and they peaked close to $2.5 million. And 15-16, our contribution was $1.8 million. Earnings weren't too good in 15-16, but 16-17 thus far, almost $1.5 million as of third quarter. So our ending balances have been pretty consistent over the last 3 years, since 14-15 to current year, hoovering a little bit over $20 million. Kind of a new GASB statement, GASB 75. We're going to have to, GASB 75 removes the direct link between the measurements for funding purposes, which we have customarily done under GASB 43 and 45, and the measurement of OPEB expense. So GASB 75 is going to focus on the OPEB expense, and the liabilities go onto the face of the financial statements. So, in an effort to bring more transparency to government, to show the actual liabilities that exist in government, the GASB decided to come forward with the GASB 75. So any amount that's not funded, that there's still a net pension obligation out there, net OPEB obligation out there, will be measured using a kind of a lower discount rate. So it increases the amount of liabilities in our financial statements that'll look different than in our OPEB valuation report. It'll be much higher. Over the years, CEO Espinosa's talked about the things that your board has done to control or manage the OPEB costs. The caps and the Medicare caps have been the single most powerful weapon that has been used to control those costs in a way that makes OPEB affordable. So, using the actuarial valuation as of July 1st, 2015, our actuarially accrued liability is about $25 million. What we have in assets, about $20.5 million. So our unfunded actuarially accrued liabilities, about $5 million. So we're about a little bit over 80% funded, almost 81% funded.
That's a big improvement from the last time we heard the report, right?
Well, it's been pretty consistent. As of last year, it's consistent to last year, but from the previous year, it is much better because in the previous year we didn't have those Medicare caps in place, and so our actual accrued liability was higher, and so we weren't funded at the 80% level.
Supervisor Munzer?
Joe Paul, do you know kind of what the average amount that most counties have funded these?
No, I don't. But I've had this conversation with CalPERS, at least with the CERBT people there, and it ranges from 0% to 100%, and actually 120% in some cases of funding. So, some people, some agencies put very little to nothing in to address the pre-funding, and others are fully funded.
When you say agencies, are you talking about counties or just the agencies?
Well, the CalPERS Trust includes cities, counties, special districts. So specifically counties,
okay,
I don't know what the answer
between
is.
your counterparts in the counties, you haven't had this discussion. Because what I'm hearing is most counties are not anywhere near 80%. Some of the smaller districts, like AMBAG and the Air District, we're close to 100% funded, but we're very, very small agencies. But what I'm hearing is most counties are not anywhere near 80%.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to that, Mr. Chair. So again, my conversations with my peers, other CAOs, there's different flavors for each county too. It's not apples to apples. Some of them will do. Santa Cruz has a formula they use for when you retire on the health, depending on how many years you have. PIMCO minimums. I mean, there's a lot of different flavors. So the percentages may be, they may basically they're not apples to apples. But I can tell you that a lot of my peers, they're not at 80%. They're lower than that from my conversations that I have. And to add to your comment, Supervisor Botello, I think this is a significant difference when we looked at this 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, this is a big difference compared to the percentage and the funded ratio.
Okay, what that translates to in the current year, what's it cost us to do OPEB? Well, just for the actuarial determined annual contribution, our normal costs are about $500,000, and our unfunded liability, our payment towards covering that unfunded liability for current employees is almost $400,000. So about that. Well, the payment, the actuarial determined contribution, is $912,000. That's how much we have to collect this year just for that payment. Okay. And on top of that, we have $1.8 billion in retiree pay-go. So when you add those two together, the total OPEB cost is about $2.7 million.
What was it last year, Joe Paul?
It was about 200,000 less.
Okay.
What was that? Because it was
Healthcare costs were for retirees were lower. So on a per employee basis, if we break down that component, the actuarially determined contribution is about $1,800. The retiree healthcare pay-go is about $3,600. So together we have to collect, $5,500 in somewhere around there for to cover OPEB for actives and current.
Actives and retirees.
Yes, I'm retirees, sorry. Yes. Okay, so just considerations for the board. About half of these expected costs are attributable to the general fund, $1.4 million. Dependent upon budget constraints, the board may opt to have some portion of retiree health care costs to come out of the CERBT, the trust, what we've already established, prior to 100% funded status. So that's kind of where we're at now. So the board may opt to only pay the actuarial determined contributions, the $913,000. May take a wait and see at the end of the fiscal year to cover the retiree pay-go costs, and once it determines that there's a surplus to the budget. These are all considerations that the board might have, and that concludes my presentation.
Supervisor Patel. Supervisor Rito. Thank you, Joe Paul.
Okay.
Ray, let them open to the public. Anyone from the public? None? All right. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, Joe. Next item will be County Administration Officers Ray. Hold discussion pertaining to hiring a lobbyist to represent the interests of San Benito County at the state level.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your board, through Supervisor Robert Rivas, asked to discuss this item, potentially looking at hiring a lobbyist to represent our county at the state level. And possibly, I think the remarks from Supervisor Rivas was to possibly use economic development funds or some other funding. In our development of the budget, we did actually earmark $120,000 for this, still allocating the same status quo on economic development funds. But we wanted to open it up for discussion. This is obviously a time to talk about the budget and talk about strategies and plans for our county. So I wanted to open it up to the board and for a discussion item. But we did budget for that this year. We can obviously remove that if the board wishes, but we wanted to open that up for conversation.
In the 16-17 budget, there's money set aside for that?
16-17, no, but for this for the 17-18 for the new budget that we'll be hearing June 26th
and
of this year,
$120,000.
We allocated in the budget process. And another reminder for the public as well as the board, we will be discussing a mock budget hearing June. Let me get the actual date here. At our June meeting, which will be, the June 13th meeting in the afternoon. So we're going to be having a mock hearing. We'll discuss RMA, their budgets, and we're going to go through each budget, each fund pretty quickly, and we're going to highlight this item as well and and go through the budget in general. So I just wanted to make sure that was open, and I just wanted to open it back to the board.
Perfect. Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, I think I brought this up. I can't remember the context of the discussion. Maybe it was transportation. Maybe it was, I'm not sure what the issue was we were talking about. But certainly, I've been a big advocate of this for many years. My time, way back when, over 10 years ago, when I was a young, college student who had just graduated and was on the freelance editorial board. It's way back in the day. And I recall we wrote an editorial board about hiring a lobbyist to represent the county. And I was much younger than I am now. And I remember the CAO at the time, Ms. Susan Thompson, called me in to basically scold me in her office to tell me that she thought my idea was a bad one. But I still contend that it is a good idea and that we need, as a county, now that I'm in this position, we need advocacy in Sacramento, and we need advocacy for our county when it comes to issues, and some of these issues, obviously are attached to funding, and so certainly, if we hire a lobbyist, we're not going to, they're not going to bring millions of dollars to our county, but certainly they're going to score some victories for us, and they'll bring some resources back to our county. And I looked at some of the services that lobbyists do provide for other counties, and we're talking about legislative monitoring, legislative analysis, budget reporting and advocacy for our county, strategic advocacy and advice, coalition and advocacy network, profile work and relationship enhancement. And so I think that this certainly isn't an open check. This is certainly something, a relationship that we can have with somebody in Sacramento that's going to work on our behalf and on our, on behalf of our interests. And at the same time, we can expect reporting. We can expect that this lobbyist is someone that's going to follow through on the activities on behalf of our county in Sacramento. And that's certainly something that I would like to see happen and something that I think that we need. And when you look at the average amount spent by all counties on reportable lobbying in 2015, that amount was $221,000. The average amount spent by the 28 counties with reportable lobbying expenditures in 2015, that amount was nearly $500,000 at $475,000. And so certainly it isn't cheap, but certainly it's, we spend zero. And certainly I think it's worth a try. Whether we do this I know we flirted with the idea in the past, but I think it's time that we do something about it, and we give it a shot. So thank you, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with Supervisor Rivas. I think it's past time that we go forward with hiring a lobbyist to plead our case in Sacramento. So I concur with Supervisor Rivas. Thank you.
Supervisor Botello?
Well, if we could find the money in the budget, I'm certainly supportive of the concept of having a lobbyist, and I would like to add that person could not only be an advocate for us in Sacramento, but maybe even Washington. There's issues that are national issues that affect our county as well. The use of the BLM lands, whether it's Clear Creek reopening, possible of oil exploration on the federal lands, and that the impact that will have on our county is tremendous. And I think we have to have a consistent voice that is able to articulate that to our elected leaders at the federal level and the state level. So, if we're able to put this together and have the follow through, it could be a real positive thing for San Diego County. So I certainly support the concept.
I'm okay with it. My only concern is the $120,000 for our 17-18 budget. If we escape the 17-18 budget without scratching any other major programs, then yeah, I think this will be a good idea. Taking that aside, being a representative for the CSAC and for NACO is when I go talk to other county supervisors or commissioners in different parts of the nation, I am already at a disadvantage because somehow they tend to have a consultant already or lobbyists already working with them and tell them, okay, you need to talk to this person, you need to go here, you need to go there. And I just felt that, I have Ray here, but, he can't do much, But what I meant is that, what I meant is that Ray's not in Washington or Sacramento. And, Ray does a great job. He does guide us sometimes, but having a lobbyist in these two key places, it opens up doors for other opportunities. And we might not see the investment, we might not see the gains today, but I think in 2 or 3 years, those small investments will start showing dividends down the road. So I think it's important. Supervisor Rivas?
And that's a fair point, and I think what a lobbyist would tell you is, hey, give me your wish list. Yeah. I may not be able to do everything on this list, but I'll certainly have some accomplishments and be able to bring something to this county. So, but you're absolutely right. It's about networking. It's about having this person work on our behalf. In particular in Sacramento, I hadn't thought about in our nation's capital, but certainly with through their ties and through their relationships, being able to set up meetings for all of us and for our administrative staff for those most important issues that face our county, and when it comes up for some funding opportunities. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ray.
May I add to that? When we actually hired a lobbyist to assist us with our E-Raft, and it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen the first year, but the second year it did happen, and he was working hard, and he really kind of became the face of our county because other people knew, hey, that's San Benito County guy, and so he would go, and there were some things that came up as well with regards to roads that that we weren't really aware of, and they needed some numbers. They went to him, and he called us, and we immediately got on it and provided the state with some numbers regarding our roads and the failing condition and what we can do to address that. So having a lobbyist, I think, up there, having our ears, having them be our ears and our eyes to address things, especially when we need it immediately, I think it is a real benefit. Yeah. And to highlight the impact, we probably didn't spend more than $10,000, maybe $15,000. I'm trying to remember exactly what the number was, and we received as a county as a whole about $3.4 million. So, it paid dividends for us.
Yeah, I guess we're way overdue. I guess. I mean, who are we kidding? I mean, let me open to the public. Anyone from the public?
Thank you. Marty Richmond from Hollister. I once did an analysis of lobbying spending in Sacramento, and the answer was that government lobbied government more than anybody else. Okay? So people holler about the unions, and they holler about the corporations, and they do lobby. So the teachers' union lobbies and the physicians lobby. But the biggest lobbying money was spent by far by other government agencies. For instance, the Los Angeles School District had a lobby. Well, it's a big operation, okay? And all the big operations do. So I think you do need it. My concern is I think you ought to try to find somebody who represents counties our size with our issues. And the reason is that the lobbying power is about consolidating votes and consolidating issues. With less than 57,000 population, you might get somebody who can help you find your way around, but you don't have a real lot of clout. If you want clout, you'd be better off if you could find. There's I was doing it for a different reason, but there's 21 counties in California that have between 30,000 and 250,000 population. You put them all together, they still only make 2 million and something people. So it's a very small amount of the state population. But it is 21 counties. And when I looked at their budgets, basically their budget issues and their revenue issues look essentially the same. They're not identical, but they're essentially the same. If you start moving to real small counties that have 1,800 people, they look totally different. If you look to counties that have 10 million people or 6 million or 5 million, they look totally different. But you take this core group, that's a lot of counties. And even though the population is different. So I would hope somebody up there at Sacramento would be looking to be the lobbyist for people in that category and would basically, because we would most likely have the same position on most items that would affect us, not our individual position, but our position on state bills and so forth. So finding the right lobbyist, I would hope you could find one who represented a lot of counties about our size and would be familiar not just with our individual issues, but the issues of counties our size. And I don't think it can hurt. It's unfortunate that the way the world works, you have to shortcut the system. But we have no other lobbying group here. In other words, we don't have a big university, so they're not in the educational lobby. We're not big in the tech industry, so we're not in the tech lobby, so we got to do something. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else? Sheriff?
Yeah, good morning. I think this is my first opportunity to provide public comment. And I don't have a yellow card in, so if
It's
you
okay.
need to go sit down.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're good.
As a department head, obviously I grow very uncomfortable hearing about other expenditures going anywhere but my own department. But I do want to comment on this particular item. I'm encouraged to hear that your board is considering an opportunity like this and evaluating the potential benefits to our community by having a closer connection to what's occurring in Sacramento. The other sheriffs around the state, many of them have legislative analysts as a part of their staff who provide the analysis on legislation that is in the pipeline and also serve as lobbyists to provide a bit of education and information to those that are considering making decisions in Capitol Hill that affect all of us. With the constant influx of new politicians going to Sacramento, many of them have yet to gain the experience of understanding how their decisions play out in communities like ours. And we need to speak with them and educate them and show them the outcome of their decisions, and preferably before they make those decisions. So I would support this board continuing to look at this as a necessary function for our county. And Mr. Chairman, I experience the same thing you do when I'm with my colleagues around the state who often have more advanced information about what's occurring than I can, despite my effort to read everything and talk to everybody. So thank you, and I would certainly applaud the board for evaluating this.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, so we'll put it on the agenda. We'll put it on the budget consideration. Yeah. And at the same time, Ray, why don't you have your staff start doing some research and see how we can go out and look at potential lobbyists? I do like Marty's idea of trying to bring someone who understands San Benito, small counties, someone who has experience with working with small counties.
And I think we might, if the board does decide to move forward with this during the budget time, I think it'd behoove us to maybe create an ad hoc committee or go through the process, an RFP go through the right process, and to really interview and glean what would work. Transparency and
I have a feeling it's going to go through, so I'm going to point Supervisor Rivas and myself to this committee.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So that's it. Okay. Okay. All right, moving on.
So the last item on our agenda is a CIP. I want to first thank Adam as well as RMA for their work on gathering information prior to the presentation. I did ask them to put a high-level report together with regards to CIPs. As the board recalls, last year in our 16-17 budget, we went through the process through the budget hearing pretty well. But when it came to the CIP, Adam was just recently brought back on board, and there was some staff that happened to be out of the office. So the CSA presentation and the CIPs, there was, didn't probably go as well as I would have liked. So I kind of wanted to discuss it in advance during the special board meeting today, and at least put it at a high level. What projects we want to look at, what projects are possibly funded, which ones have been rolled over from year to year, and just really kind of scrutinize that and talk about it in a casual setting today, get some board direction, and then move forward. So I'd like to invite Adam Goldstone, please, Capital Project Manager, up.
Good morning. All right. So I've put together, this part is going to cover facilities. Senior Engineer Jim Pulfer will be up after me to talk about the road projects. We've been spending a lot of time, obviously, this year trying just to work on projects, and I've been working on this in between. And one of the key things I wanted to highlight is that we have increasingly become apparent that we really need to look at having a 5-year CIP. And I will talk about that a little bit as we get further into this and some of the benefits. But approaching the creation of one of those for next year was kind of driving how I organized this year's look at the projects. So as we'll get into it, I've divided things into 3 groups. One is rollover projects, projects that we've been working on this year and that aren't finished yet. Some of those do need some additional funding. Then I've got a group of projects that I recommend that we try to undertake next year. And then the third group is a list of projects that have been requested either by other departments or by things that I see coming that we need to address, but obviously there's not enough time or money at this point to work on them. Now, all of these groups were pretty much just my assignment into the groups. As you look at them, things can move around and go from one category to another. And again, no decisions need to be made today. This is just for your information. And then the final note I want to make is that as we get into those groups, the numbers get a little less dialed in. I don't have time, obviously, to do full cost estimates on 40 projects. So as we go down those groups, the numbers become more ballpark and are still being dialed in as we work on this.
Supervisor Munzer?
Two questions, Adam.
Yes.
What accomplishments what project have we completed in the last 12 months?
In the last 12 months, we completed, most recently there were 2 grant-funded projects out at the migrant camp that they had gotten some grants about a year and a half ago. The projects got on hold due to some staff issues. We got those back on track. It was a slurry seal and a sewer line repair. Those were both completed last month. There was, I'm trying to think, there was another one. Sorry, there's so many. I hadn't really looked at what we had completed because most of the work so far this year has just been getting everything organized and getting, design and getting our arms around everything. So
Okay.
Unfortunately, we haven't completed a lot.
Okay, and unfortunately, I feel that is the recurring story I keep hearing. every time this comes up is everything gets rolled over. Everything gets rolled over. Nothing ever gets completed. Then my other question is the Bertha Briggs building replacement. How did that get on this list? Because I remember that coming before us. I requested that you run that past the Vets Park Commission. I don't remember it ever coming back before us, so what's it doing on this list?
Sure. I can address that now, or when we get to it. I was going to go through each one.
I'd like an answer now.
Sure. So those projects on that page, and I haven't shown that to the public yet. It's on the next slide. The projects at the bottom of that list in italics are projects that were approved last year, but that I have not started. We have not incurred any costs on this year.
But that's what I'm saying. I do not remember this project being approved.
It was in the past year's CIP. And I did bring a contract for the architect that was denied. And so I haven't been able to revisit that with all the other projects going on. It was identified. I don't know if it was identified by Parks and Rec before we put it on the CIP. That would have been before my return. So I'm not sure what input they've had, but it was in the board's.
So you're saying that this particular project was on the CIP when you returned?
That's correct.
Okay. All right then. Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So just as a quick overview, we have in current projects, there were 20 projects that were funded last year, a total of a little over 26 million. I've been working on 13 of those. 7 have not yet been initiated. And then there is an additional funding request for those 20 projects of 7.2 million. Now, of course, the lion's share of that is for the jail project. So that's updating all of those numbers that you're well aware of. So here's a list of the rollover projects. The projects in white on the screen are active, and the ones in black have not begun for various reasons. And I'll go through those. First, we have obviously the jail expansion. There's an additional amount requested of roughly $5.5 million for the escalation factors that we've discussed. This does not include any CM costs, which will have to be factored in once we get the proposals, and that'll be talked about at an upcoming meeting. So that will increase the additional amount requested there. With the Hall of Records elevator replacement, that is in design and nearing completion for plan check. That one is on budget. The behavioral health building was originally budgeted at a little over $1 million. We went and bought the land for that, and I'm going to be bringing back to you in the next couple meetings a contract for an architect to do some studies and begin design out there to use up some of the available money that department has available this year. The River Parkway Regional Park, as you know, we've been working on the agreement with the other agencies, and we are in design on the road, and we're waiting for that to progress a little further. We have the homeless shelter phase 1. That will be coming to your board at the next meeting for consideration to go to bid and adopt the plans. That project has increased a little bit. HHSA indicates that they have the funds for that, either from the next grant or from some of their other sources. We have the Vets Park Irrigation Project, which you awarded to a contractor a few meetings ago and increased the allocation a little bit to cover any potential change orders. We have Fire Station number 3, which again we've spoken about. And per the last meeting, the direction given, an additional $271,000 in general fund loan will be allocated to that. Next, we have the Sheriff's Office locker room and showers. An architect has been put under contract to design that, and they are working on that. Juvenile hall facility improvements, budgeted at $120 last year. The CAO's office has found another $280,000 from juvenile impact. Was it impact, criminal justice impact? I don't recall the source. Yeah. So that'll go a long way to helping all the issues that they have out there. I'm meeting an architect today out there to get a proposal to work on this. Security systems and infrastructure. Your board budgeted $50,000 last year to look into this. I have gotten a quote just to do the 2301 building. I have had a presentation to other departments that are interested and they like the system. The HHSA building is also going to be looking at this. So based on some of those quotes, I'm requesting an additional $200,000, but that's something we'll obviously need to talk about, how we want to roll this out. This can be something that can be spread out over multiple years. $50,000 is not enough to do any one building. It's almost enough. So we can talk further about the exact scope of that and the timing. The public health and environmental health TI. Environmental health is in. They've been in for about 6 months now. At the end of last year, they went in. Design is almost done on the public health tenant improvements. They do also need an infusion that HHSA will be able to cover, according to their statements to me. IT infrastructure, this is just something we put in for purchases that they have throughout the year. An additional $150,000 is requested to keep upgrading those components next year. And then last, we have the hospital property remediation. Now, no costs have been incurred from this $500,000 on this, as we've been working with the CSDC on their development out there. So it's up to the board if they want to keep this in case the project doesn't move forward in the next fiscal year. Although right now everything's on track with that. Now these other projects have not begun for various reasons. PSAP relocation, we needed more time to do a little bit more study into that and what the costs really will be. We've not been able to get to that yet. COG improvements, they were hoping to get some funding for $100,000. They did not receive it this fiscal year, but they're still hopeful for next year, so I've kind of left it on there until I get more information from them. Materials recycling facility and resource recovery park are both out of our integrated waste. We have not had staff in that department now for a little while, so those are just holding until we have more direction about what those projects actually are. Vets Park improvements was approved last year to upgrade the bathrooms and the barbecue pits. That was something that our road superintendent was going to lead on with my help due to some of the change over there in staffing. We weren't able to get very far on that. He did, that superintendent was able to do some research on the Vets Park parking lot lighting, but we did not get it to a point where we could actually purchase a system or go to bid yet. But I do have his information and we'll be able to work on that. And then the Bertha Briggs building replacement should really say renovation for that amount of money. It's more of a renovation at this point. And we'll need to figure out a way to move forward on that one. The next list we have are projects that are recommended. Some of these come from other departments. Some of these are just things that we need to take care of. The first one is the creation of a 5-year CIP. This is envisioned as a one-time cost to kind of help us create the document and get the framework and the information that we can update with staff in-house annually after that. IT relocation, as you may or may not be aware, our IT department is the only office still operating up on Park Hill in the city buildings. And it is a very good idea to work on getting them into a county building this year. We have met with them. We have found a few possible locations where we're trying to narrow it down to what's the most suitable. Next, we have the Homeless Shelter Phase 2, which is another CDBG grant-funded project, which would build on the project that we're going to work on this year. An ADA transition plan is something our county does not currently have, and is something that we should have prepared. basically identifies anywhere we may have accessibility issues and plans for repairing those. Next, we have a furniture line item, which is something new that I'm proposing as a way to have a funding available for various departments to upgrade their furniture. As you may be aware, a lot of departments are operating with some very, very old, very unergonomic, very poor condition furniture, and it's very difficult to upgrade those. Having a little funding item here would allow people to get chairs and new cubicles and conference tables, things like that, as their needs change or as things break and get in disrepair. Another project that was requested was Hall of Records security systems. This was requested out of the elections office, but every department in that building has had various meetings over the past few months about a lot of issues over there. And so this money could go a long way to helping the building as a whole, not one department, but all of them, just be a little bit more secure and a little more safe. Additionally, Hall of Records signage, a small project there just to do kind of a comprehensive wayfinding on that building. We haven't been able to do a whole lot since the courts moved out. We took off some signs and we added a few, but we need a little bit more of a comprehensive approach there. And then finally, this one just came up when we had that little mini heat wave a couple weeks ago. The HVAC system at the Library Office of Ed failed on us, and it took us a few days to get it back online. It is a very tenuous fix at best, and the only course of action, unfortunately, since it's been band-aided for so many years, is a full replacement. That's an estimated cost based on some quick conversations we had.
Just run a flume from this HVAC to theirs, and you'll keep that building pretty cool.
There you go. And then the last list here, these are projects requested either by other departments or things that I see coming. The numbers, again, are just orders of magnitude ballparks. These are projects that we don't have any obvious non-general fund funding source or the time necessarily to work on them, but they are all very important and would be incorporated into a 5-year plan. Public records ADA improvements, providing accessible access to the public records that currently are in the old Hall of Records building. An ERP training room that would be available to all departments for training or meetings at the Hall of Records. The old Hall of Records fire suppression to protect the documents that are contained within. Auditor's office improvements, paint and carpeting for the office upstairs in this building. Auditor's office phone system upgrade, just bringing that online with a little more technology. Library painting and lighting improvements, interior and exterior painting, lighting replacement over there for energy efficiency and better use. Ag Commissioner building improvements. As you know, that building out there is not in the best shape. Until we find another location for them, there are some things we can do out there to make it try to last a little longer. 2301 Technology Boardroom, that is the creation of a small boardroom in the upper lobby area next to the conference room that could provide some additional meeting space for the county. Government Center Master Plan, we did an RFP process earlier this year. I'm about to wrap up the selection process and identify a consultant. Southside Fuel System Emergency Generator, during our annual generator maintenance, that unit is no longer able to function. It does operate our fuel system, which would be valuable in times of an emergency. Public Works Corporation Yard Master Plan, just to look at how that site should be and can be reconfigured for the future. Jail repairs. These are existing deferred maintenance items and repairs out at the existing jail. And then we have miscellaneous roof replacements, HVAC replacements, and flooring replacements. Should be things that we routinely budget as our infrastructure is aging. Those items are going to need, from one building to another, need to be upgraded over the years. New behavioral health building, estimates that we have put that at around $10 million, and that's something we just want to get on the radar. And then a Parks Master Plan update. We have a Parks Master Plan. There is only one project left on that plan, and we are working on it. So an update to that, which would help feed into impact fees, as well as just what we want for the future, is a needed item. I have a couple of pages here just for some quick quotes from our neighboring county CIPs in their introductions. In Monterey County, they explain how a long-term CIP provides benefits, helps prioritize needs and focus attention on community goals, improves the county's chance of obtaining outside funding, and it encourages coordination of projects among county departments and helps us schedule projects to reduce issues. And finally, from Santa Clara County, they note that it's important to note that the CIP is not a budget document itself, but rather a planning tool used in conjunction with the budget document. It's to aid the Board of Supervisors in determining priorities and identifying where one-time funds should be allocated. And administration is mindful that we must address essential capital and major maintenance priorities or be faced with more costly repairs in the future. So again, no decisions are needed today. This is for your information as we move into the budget process. If you do have any comments about moving any projects around or looking at something in more detail that I can come back to you with, you can let me know now. Otherwise, at your convenience.
Thank you, Adam. Supervisor Botello?
Well, yeah, I think we have to do things a little differently than what we've been doing with of late with our capital improvement projects. I think we have to establish a 5-year plan. We have to establish what we have that's workable in our budget. Some of these projects, I think, should be taken off the list simply because we're just not going to be able to move forward with them. And, Adam I think, is kind of overtasked on a lot of these projects and keeping them, on his radar when maybe that list should be cut in half or maybe even more. I'm like Supervisor Munzer. I like seeing things get done. And if it's only one or two things on that list that get done, so be it. But I think we need to kind of do things a little differently going forward from here, given the opportunity. A couple of these projects, of course, I'm very, very concerned about the jail and the costs. It doesn't seem like we have a very good handle, even up at this late juncture, what the impact be on the general fund. We can't let that project get away from us, obviously, with the state grant and the limited opportunities in the future for such money. So we have to plug along there and find cost-saving measures. The River Parkway Regional Park, maybe that needs to be kind of reevaluated. So, as one example, maybe that money ought to be allocated to some of the existing parks that we have and some of the needs that are there. But the additional requested funds is a number that concerns me in the fact that I don't know if we have any funds that could be requested for unless it's taken from another project or reprioritized. Thank you.
Adam, there's two things that I don't even know if it's even a fair question. The first one is, and it kind of, the jail extension kind of triggered my mind on this question. I know we're looking at a $6.25 million general fund as of today, and I don't even know which way it's going to go. But is there any way, in Ray, too, is there any way where if there's a project that's going to be a CIP, can you put another item that says what's the potential yearly operating expense? Can we do that? Is that feasible?
I think so. I mean, I think that we can, establish
Does it
square
make sense?
footage.
Is it valuable to know that?
That's a very valid point. I think we can probably do that. I think it would be beneficial for us.
And that would vary.
Because it not only Adam just read Santa Clara's. If you wouldn't mind going to that slide real quick, Santa Clara's slide where it says, it's a budget document, or it's not a budget document, but it's used in conjunction. And it's a goal, but and also in here, I believe it says there's one time, it's used for one-time funds. The second paragraph there, but it has operational, ongoing ramifications down the road. So you have a very valid point, Supervisor De La Cruz.
I mean, because my experience here is, supervisor, and Batalo's been on it. Jerry, in this case, you've been a young supervisor, and I see Supervisor Lowe out there too. We've always approved CIP projects in the past, and we've very little discussed what are the ongoing expenditures. And I think maybe we should put a little line there and say, okay, this is the potential yearly operations. That if you approve this project, this is the impact. So at least the board collectively can say, oh, you know what, maybe we want to hold on to that because we do have the money now, but we might not have the money from an operational perspective down the road. Just food for thought. I don't know if it's valuable or not. Don't know.
I think it would be extremely valuable.
And then the other one is, I'm going to say right now on the public, the regional park concept, I think we need to revisit that. This my opinion.
Okay.
Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm going back to here. We have 20 rollover projects. Now, today we're presented with 18 more projects. These rollover projects, I bet you if former Supervisor Lowe got up here, she could sit there and tell us more than half of them were here when she was on this board. We got to get these things done. And I guess what I'm looking from staff is pick out some of these projects and commit to getting them done by this time next year. Get the low-hanging fruit. Get some of these projects done so that we can feel better. Just to keep putting things on a project and then rolling it over year after year after year is just not acceptable. I agree with Supervisor Patello. We need a much smaller list, and a list that we can actually do something about.
Sure. 9 of those projects there in white will be under construction this calendar year. Not all of them will be completed, like the jail won't be completed next fiscal year, but 9 of them are very close to breaking ground.
And then one last thing I want to say, and I don't know if it is, okay. As a representative of the supervisor's representative of the area where the old hospital is located, that needs to be gone yesterday. And I have heard that with the group that we are trying to sell the property to, they're getting pushback from staff about having to do EIRs and such not before they can do anything. That is a nuisance. It's a dangerous nuisance. Management analyst Louis Valdez and I have been up there with neighbors. It's becoming a drug hangout. It's becoming we cannot keep the kids out of it. No matter what we do, they find a way into it. That building, and we have talked about it year in and year out, it needs to be gone. Whether we remove the roadblocks for the group to go forward and tear it down themselves and then purchase the property, or we utilize this money that we set aside and do it, it needs to get done. And that needs to be a high priority for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. Okay, let me open up to the public. Anyone from the public? Supervisor Lowe?
Good morning. I see you're still having the same fun with the same projects. Just, you've got to be so frustrated.
But, Supervisor, how many projects can you name without looking up on the list, name by heart?
Oh, probably all of them, Supervisor Munzer. I just really, looking at this, though, I think there's a column that we're missing. Because some of these projects, especially like behavioral health, and I'm sitting on that board again, that money came into us a long time ago. I've been gone for 6 years, so it was a long time ago. But there's dates required with some of these that you have to move, and that column isn't here, and you don't want something to come up and say, oh, we've got to do this in 3 years, because it's not going to get done. So I think it's really important that you have an extra column telling you how much money has to be spent by what date and what has to be done, because you certainly don't want to lose any of this money. Even though we never get the projects done, you don't want to lose the money. So, I know that on the homeless shelter there's some strings attached time-wise, and I know on behavioral health there's strings attached time-wise. So I think it would behoove you to get that column. Thank you.
Thank you. Good thought. We will incorporate your ideas to that, Supervisor Lowe.
Yep. Hi, Marty Richmond from Hollister, and I too have been up here, and I can remember how many times we've discussed the hospital. Well, I can't remember how many times. We've done it so many times. It's a blur to me. I have to be honest with you. With due respect, which means I'm about to say something you're not going to like, just sitting there and saying, let's get them done, is not going to get them done. It will spur people to perhaps work harder and longer, but if you don't put adequate staff on these projects, you're not getting them done. Now, if you have projects on this list that are funded and are needed, and we don't do them, you're punishing the residents of this county. Because if not, they shouldn't be on the list. If we decide, oh, this is no benefit to our people, let's get them off the list. I have no problem with that. My problem is we got a bunch of projects on here that I assume we thought were worth $1 million because we put $1 million against them, or someone gave us the money to do it. And, we're punishing the residents by not getting it done, and we're doing that because essentially, I really am reluctant to get into staffing issues because I usually leave that to people who are responsible for the work. But I'm really concerned. I hear time and again, Adam, I'm not picking on Adam, saying we don't have the time to do that and we don't have the time to do this. Have we realistically looked at this and said how many man hours it takes to do a good job here? By the way, if you get a number, somebody gets off the cuff and says, it's just a number of zeros, that's probably not an accurate number, and I think we know that. Everybody knows that. It's just a kind of a guess. And without an accurate number, none of these projects, they stay on the list, and then all of a sudden an accurate number comes in and they get thrown off the list. So we've invested all this time for nothing, okay? It doesn't make any sense to me. I think you ought to make sure you've got enough staff to do the projects you want to do. Once they get rolling, once they're actually in construction, I think essentially they're done as far as the engineering group's concerned, except for changes and things like that. But they're essentially done. The done part is to get them started, okay? Actually get the shovel in the ground and get earth moving or something like that. But it's also important to get a good estimate of what it costs and when you can do it. And to do that, I think you need an adequate staff, and I don't I'm not going to say who and how many because I don't know. But you got to do it. Otherwise, nothing will get done again. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Anyone else from the public? None? Okay, I'll close it. So that was an update.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if we could have a little bit more discussion on,
Sure.
on how we're going to proceed so that the staff has a real clear picture of, to move forward with a CIP plan, attaching some costs, and what is the priority for the board. And really, we got to have a better idea what the revenue is for us to move some of these projects forward. Because what I've seen is that we spent a lot of time and effort on projects that we probably don't have the funding for.
Okay, so you want to start redefining this list?
Well, Ray has something to say.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that's the reason why I've asked RMA and Adam and Jim to come before your board today to discuss that because, I think administration, we all feel the same thing. And I know Adam and Jim and staff are just taxed. There's so many things going on that they're working on that, like everybody actually in the entire county, a lot of the offices are doing a lot with not very much. What I would recommend doing is for us to put the columns. I think those are really good suggestions from the board and the public. I think we need to come back and look at where we're at with the existing projects, probably itemize as or show those in a different color. What estimated dates of completion are, I think, is going to be really important. Timelines associated with these. And as well as priorities from a safety and health perspective, I think is really important when we're dealing with heating and cooling and other items that we need to address. I think are going to be really important. And I think that bringing this back to your board on the June the 13th during our mock hearing to go over this one more time. But I think today what we wanted to do is just hear from you what priorities are, and I think it's hard to know that when we don't know what where the funding's coming from. And I know we have allocated some funding. Melinda, I believe it's about $450,000 for CIPs. I think we need to define that and then allow your board to, for us to talk about where that funding goes to for those projects. But I just wanted to put all these up here. I'm really grateful that Adam put this together and to share with you kind of some realistic numbers associated with all these projects.
Yeah, and we've had that same discussion at the facilities committee meeting to kind of better define an action plan going forward, and it's not going to be done in the next month or two. It's hopefully have a better plan as we evolve into next year's budget cycle.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to further. So I know our management analyst, Louis Valdez, has been working on impacts. He's been working on our impact fees, our fees as well. This has really a deep correlation with these projects as well. And we met yesterday, and we need to really define more clearly some of these items so that in that way there's funding associated with some of these projects. And I think we should have something to your board soon with regards to the impact fees, which then next year probably will be a good year where we can start putting some funding. But obviously there's still funding that we probably need to look at from grants, general fund, and other things to account for our existing costs for our existing residents. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that as well, that we're addressing some of these things through impacts and other fees.
Do you want to wait or?
No, we shouldn't be waiting. There's work to be done.
No, but I mean, right now, do you want to provide a list right now? Or do you want to wait till?
I think we need the whole board and preparation.
Right, but maybe just earmarking. I think I heard from two of you, the parks, So I think maybe we can put that as a priority to reevaluate that.
Yeah. Okay.
And anything else here that sticks out that we can look at in advance. But we'll obviously do some work on all of it.
Okay, perfect. And hopefully all 5 supervisors will be here at the next meeting. Okay, well, moving on. Go back to closed session.
Actually,
We're
Jim
gonna have
Poll for roads is also a very important item. We have our infrastructure. Jim, though, and in light of timing, just be mindful of timing.
All right, go for it.
Jim Polfer, Public Works Division of RMA, was requested to put together a document to bring to the board's attention some priority projects that are underway at this point. And this document was put together as I'm not sure if the board was aware or if it's been spoken to you in the past, but if you look at the 5th column over, 6th column over, there's a thing that says local share. Each one of your federally funded projects, and even the ones for FEMA and the USDA, they all have a local share component to them. For the Federal Highway Administration projects, we use what's called toll credits most of the time, and so we can get 100% funded. That's not guaranteed. So it's important that the board is aware that there is a possible local agency cost in these projects as well.
How much money do we have in the fund for local funding?
I haven't looked at that yet. All I know is that's a potential number that should be aware of, and that's part of the CIP with the 5-year program, to where we can plan that out. If we don't need it, great, and we can reallocate if necessary. But But at least it's known that it's a possible expenditure.
Right, because I think we need to know what we're working with on that side of it too. And I think a lot of that local contribution is our employees working on the project. I think, and it's not real money. It's
an
it's
employee
real
working on a
money
project
because
is
we
money.
got to pay these guys.
It's an expenditure, and it's usually paid for out of the road fund. Is what it should come from, but I don't know if the road fund is adequate to cover these expenses. Some of these are fairly significant.
Mr. Chairman, through the chair, I apologize to the chair. Looking at the list of bridges and the local share that comes out of the road fund, some of these bridges should not even be on the list.
That is understood, and also understand that this is also over 5 years.
Even in 5 years, because the way I view it is that every bit of the local share is pavement that could be spread on resurfacing roads rather than fixing a bridge that doesn't need to be fixed. Right?
Well, they're all candidates for replacement based upon their coding and the scoring that they received when they were inspected.
Pardon me?
They were all put on a project list and became candidates for replacement after a cost-benefit analysis and an evaluation of their condition.
I know. I've been always critical of that list because I didn't put bridges on the list. As one supervisor voted, all of a sudden we were given this list, and what I look at, and I got another phone call just during this meeting complaining about the condition of roads. They're not complaining about condition of bridges, although I do have one bridge that does need to be worked on, and it's not on the list.
That would be Carr?
Yes, exactly. And I would trade Anzar rocks to fix Carr. And, certainly some of these other smaller roads, a tremendous amount of local share is allocated to it. And that's a problem where we don't need to fix the bridges. We need to put pavement on the road. And that's your predecessor's fault, not yours. And you're doing your job. But I have a level of frustration that we haven't had enough money in the past decade to do chip seal and to do overlays. And that's what we should concentrate on. These bridges, with the exception of Hospital Road, Supervisor Munzer.
Thank you.
But it's frustrating. Union Road Bridge, for example, is a bridge I think is very serviceable for the foreseeable future, and we're tying up $2.5 million of local share on that. I'd rather see us kind of move towards pavement. I don't know. That's my opinion. There's 4 other guys here.
I tell you, we can solve this real easy. Just go out and take a picture of all Anthony's bridges and roads and put them on this list, and we'll approve it. I mean, we'll do all that.
These structures, I've already looked into reallocating funds if it was feasible. The problem with that now is when these bridges were programmed, there was more funds than bridges. The reverse is true now. There's more projects throughout the state requesting funds than funds that are available. So the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans are not looking at reallocating funds within our district. They'll take the project off and give it to another county. That doesn't necessarily serve us that well because these are bridges that do need to be replaced. And it's going to be one day or the next that it will happen. And so, I mean, while it's here, we should probably look at finishing those. And in addition to that, we are also obligated to finish the projects by agreements that were signed and funds distributed and given to the county to do this work. If we do not finish the projects or come to some sort of conclusion that the projects are not feasible at a certain stage of the process, then we are liable for reimbursing or returning the funds. So while it's not the best situation, we are being funded to replace some infrastructure in the county. What we would do after something like this, we'd do a lessons learned and approach it differently in the future. But right now, my recommendation to the board would be to finish these projects and as soon as possible. There's other projects that are piling up behind these also that we would have to move on to in the coming years as well. Dueling Road Bridge I just got the report on that one, and it's borderline structurally deficient.
Which bridge?
Mr.
Dueling Road.
Supervisor Munzer?
No. Well, is Supervisor Patello finished?
Yeah. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done ranting.
I share Supervisor Patello's frustration over these projects, but I think, and you pointed out, Jim, I think if we were to walk away from these projects, we would pay our local share back to Caltrans or the feds or whoever the money came from. I at this point, I don't think we can considerably walk away from them. Couple other comments. One is the historical park embankment. The window to do the improvement needed after this past winter storms is a very short window.
Yes.
How is that coming? Because if we don't do anything this summer to protect the banks out there, we won't have a historical park next.
We are having a kickoff meeting with FEMA on the 24th of this month.
Okay, but
and at that point, we have a project.
But have we started the process of all the state fish and wildlife permits and the feds and everything? Have we started the process of acquiring those permits?
Not on that project. No, we have not.
Okay, because
we have an 18-month window from project kickoff to completion.
So you have to have a project before you can start the application for the permits?
Yes.
Okay, I see. Because if we have another wet winter,
yes,
we won't need this project.
Yes, understood.
we won't have a park out there anymore.
I concur. The river's
So,
right there. Has
yeah.
relocated itself right there against that bank.
Yeah. So, and then my final comment is the same to you, Jim, and everyone as to Adam. Decide in this list something that will be done by this time next year, so that we're not coming and the list is exactly the same. Let's make sure we get something done in the next 12 months.
Well, we are moving forward on every single one of those, and they're all at different stages
That's
of
not
preparedness.
that's not what I said.
Breaking ground this year, as I spoke on several. The Hospital Road Bridge is one that will break ground. It is a 2-year project, though. It will not
Okay.
be completed.
But is there anything on this list that we can get done in the next 12 months?
The levee repair is one, yes.
Okay, I mean, again, we just need something to actually get something done in the next 12 months. From me, that's your marching orders. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Hey, Jim, I got a quick question. I understand all this other FEMA sourcing, which I support because it allows other fundings to be used. I do have some actually, I know about the John Smith Road realignment. I understand that part. The Fairview Road and Fallon Road intersection, I think I know about that one.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Chair, you bring up a good point. Why did that all of a sudden become $1 million project?
Yeah.
Worst case.
Worst case?
Worst case.
You know what that means, right? We will find the money. We'll find the expenditures to reach that amount. And then my other one is the Freitas and Flint Road intersection. When did that get into the system, and did the board approve that?
Yes, at the retreat, the board requested that we look at Freitas and Flint Road, the intersection there. There's been accidents there.
Because there's a lot of intersections that also need to be addressed too.
This was a specific request from the board at that meeting.
Yeah, I've had 2 neighbors life flighted in 2 different accidents in that intersection, and kids wait for the bus at that intersection, and we talked about it.
We talked about it because, I mean, not too long ago.
Yeah,
Somebody got killed at Highway 25 Wright Road too, a couple of years ago.
There's site distance issues at to go back to the Fairview Road and the Fallon Road.
Yeah.
There's what's called corner site distance. When you pull on up to Fallon, up to Fairview, turning right is a structure, and you don't have clear view. There's a fence.
But I guess what?
So I'm anticipating right-of-way issues there because we would have to make it more visible. And if we were to install a signal, then we have these that happen. It escalates. What you wish to be a simple fix, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And so this number here represents if it's a hard road.
Now the monies are going to be. Where are the monies coming from? Is that going to be general fund money?
Quite possibly, we are researching what's available at the state and federal level.
Could it be maybe an SB1? Is that what?
Yes, it could be.
Yeah, because I mean I have issues because I've expressed to my fellow supervisors that we need to develop a policy on what we're going to approve projects on the SB1, and we haven't even had that discussions. We're already putting things on the list that money might potentially come from.
And it could also be a safety enhancement project as well. We have got the accidents reports, and we have completed our traffic counts in the area. So we'll be doing a traffic study and seeing if there's signal warrants.
Okay. All right. Let me open up to the public. Anyone from the public? None? Okay. Any final thoughts, questions? Oh, Larry, you going to say something?
I just wanted to add 2 comments. One is, I think what I'm hearing clearly is, you look at a list like this and you think, my God, you're going to try to do all these projects at one time, and that's not really the way that it works. There might be incremental work occurring on various projects, but what it boils down to is, you need to see sort of scheduling for all of these projects, so you can see, what will be done in the next 12 months, what will be done in the next 24 months, and as we evolve this further, I think we will be able to provide that to you for all these projects. That's one of the things we'd want to create for you as part of a CIP document. The other thing I just want to mention is not included on this list, but I think what will be coming back to you would be what I would call, just pavement management program work. So this is what you've mentioned several times this morning. Let's start doing work on the roads. Let's start resealing and resurfacing the roads. And we will be looking into that. We have the pavement management study that was done, and now what we need to do is translate that into an actual program. We do have funding from SB1 that I believe should be allocated to that. There might be other funding that we can make available.
But Larry, we got to develop a policy on how the board wish to spend those monies.
The SB1.
Yes, we have
sure.
to.
Yeah, I mean there are constraints built into the program,
I
but
understand
you
that,
do
but
have some
The
latitude.
board hasn't made an official position. All 5 supervisors have said we're going to spend all the money
In District 4.
in District 4. We haven't said that yet. Right. So my recommendation is hold back a little bit until the board develops a policy and says, here's the money. Go get it based on these parameters on this policy.
We can do that. I think what I would recommend instead is that you allow us to come back to you with the report on the pavement management program and how we think you can get the best bang for your buck. Then you can have the discussion about, well, we think it's allocating too much resources in one area or another, or certain roads that we don't want to spend money, and then you can have that discussion about where you want to spend the money. But I think seeing how the pavement management program would recommend allocating those funds is probably the first step.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Larry. Any questions?
Sure. As Adam discussed, as part of the CIP, with our pavement management system that we already have the ability to prioritize roads based upon their conditions. We would come to the board with that list. At that point, we can move around, not based just upon their condition, but the need that the board sees to improve certain sections of roadway. And then that would be projected over several years with different projects beginning and being completed throughout that 5-year plan. It would be a living document that would be revisited as priorities are established and arise. And that is a work in progress at this time, that plan.
Okay, final thoughts, Supervisor Patello?
No, but I think we need the pavement management recommendation from RMA, because that's going to determine pretty much how we should strategically proceed with the limited road monies that we have to work with to bring the best benefit to all of the citizens in San Diego County.
We could include a list with the next report. I believe that's next month, or
you guys decide when you guys want to do it. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I want to thank Adam, Jim, Larry, James. Your hard work on this stuff, and it's just a level of frustration that unfortunately comes out in when we have these reports. Like with John Smith Road alignment, for 6 years I've been having to explain to the constituents that live in the area why we're not really fixing that first half mile of John Smith, and that we're going to realign it. And they just roll their eyes and they say, "Yeah, you've been saying that, forever." So it's a level of frustration when we have these projects, they don't get done. And it's kind of reaching to the boiling point for me. So I just like I said, want to see something actually get done off these projects.
And we hear that loud and clear. My goal would be to get to the point where you start getting complaints from your constituents about all of this work that's going on throughout the county. You can't drive anywhere because all these bridges are getting repaired and road work is getting done.
Those will come. Those
so much
will
stuff
also
going
come.
on. Why are we inconveniencing everyone so much? But that's where we're working towards.
Thank you, Larry.
those will happen.
Oh, they will, most certainly.
All right, thank you. All right, that concludes our meeting for today. Going back to closed session. Okay. I think it's short. Oh.